/ to the Chrome Domus. How did I like Mein Kampf? I'm in the middle of reading it. I Who wants to hear my take on Mein Kampf? I wrote down on my hand, do not talk about Hitler on stream, because I thought it would be a bad idea to do. However, I mean, we're headed in that path. The bounding crisis. By the way, Mein Kampf is Hitler's book, which was I do. People want to hear about it. Okay, I will try to keep this short. And I'll try to keep this careful. To precede all of this, if anyone wants to, I don't know, call me a lunatic or whatever, I'm going to start off by saying that I purchased Mein Kampf with the goal of figuring out what the fuck happened, basically. I want to know the German perspective on things. I'm not coming into it looking at a good evil thing. My goal is to know. I want to know what happened from their perspective. So I'm not pro-Nazi. Definitely not. I'm not saying that. I'm not anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. So everything I say, I'm not assuming the devil's advocate, but I'm trying to explain what the Germans were thinking. And once more, before going into that, at Auschwitz, confirmed 1 million people, the low end, 10 million on the high end, people were exterminated at the death camp. So in the end, a lot of bad shit happened. So I don't want to belittle that at all. But so I got Hitler's book Mein Kampf, and I came in with an objectivist goal and an objectivist perspective. However, I came in with some preconceived notions. I expected it to be angry and crazy. It turned out to be angrier than I even expected, but not nearly as crazy. Even hyper-rational at times. Some of the things were genius. I'm going to get into that. It's very angry. And what I realized is that the way that Hitler was able to do this is it wasn't really Hitler. I mean, it was. He assumed the leadership role, but he actually said for the most part, what the Germans were thinking. Hitler is more than a person. He is a manifestation of an extreme historical context. A unique historical context. So I'll go into the historical context a little bit. Again, from the German perspective, trying very hard to not be totally objective. This isn't necessarily what happened, but from the German perspective, this is what happened. So Germany gets sucked into World War I, basically by having an alliance with Austria and the Serbians or whatever. A monarch got assassinated, and everyone just goes into war because everyone was allied with someone, and it was basically unavoidable when it happened. The Germans were not really the aggressors, but they were winning the war. Silk Wrap. I kind of want to bounce the hierarchy to replay it. The Germans were actually winning the war until the United States entered World War I. Most of us don't know why the United States entered World War I. But what ends up happening is the United States win the war, the Germans lose, and there's two major results that come from the Germans losing World War I. First of all, there's the Treaty of Versailles, which totally fucks Germany over. Basically inhumane. Oops, I should have gotten I got the wrong land, because we wouldn't be able to play it anyways, but I did get the wrong land. So a lot of the Germans' land is portioned off. They're shut down militarily. They're shut down economically. And also, what we see is a portion of Palestine is taken to form Israel, given to the Zionist Jews. So from the German perspective, the United States entered the war because of the Jews and lost them the war, and Germany got fucked as a result of the war, and it went into a really brutal depression. Now, not everyone loses during a depression. When the dollar's devalued, some people come up hard and win big. And in the German country, it was, once again, this is from the German perspective, it was once again the Jews. The Jews swooped in on the land and the businesses and purchased everything for pennies to the dollar. So now you have a position where the Germans feel that the Jews are controlling them economically, they're controlling them militarily, and there's anti-Semitism is common. It's not just Jewish at this point. The United States is anti-Semitic, and even Winston Churchill is anti-Semitic, the English. Pearl Harbor got bombed. Yeah, to me, that's kind of unrelated. Staying on track with the story. Meanwhile, the Jews are about, the German population is 8 million, the Jewish population is 400,000. There's barely any Jews in the country. It's less than half of 1% is Jewish. And this tiny, tiny, tiny minority owns all the commerce and is controlling the military in Germany. And the Marxists, the communist Marxists in Europe were majority Jewish, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And the Jews even, the communists, who were led by Jewish leaders, small minority of Jewish leaders, even took control of, the Jewish government. So there's a situation where the Germans feel as though the Germans are in a hole. They're in a depression, they're poor, and the Jews have kind of become their overlord. They control the news, the tiny, tiny minority. They control the news, they control the business, they control the money. Now they control the government. And 99% of people in Germany are, I don't know if 99%, the vast majority of people are anti-Semitic at this point. Hitler just says what everyone at that time is thinking. The fact that his final solution was extermination is pretty extreme, but I mean that was the German rationale. If there's a serious problem, it's a battle for control, and we have to point out that the Germans themselves were not anti-Semitic. I said they were anti-Semitic, but that's just American words, English words. The Germans were not even, anti-Jewish is not even the right way to describe it, because it was not at all religious. It was not at all religious at all. It was totally political, totally economic. They didn't see these people as being, they didn't even see these people as being of a religion necessarily, because the Jews that were in Germany were not Semitic people. They were, if you go back to the Khazar Empire 1,000 years before World War I, 1,000 years before, it was the most powerful empire in the world, the Khazar Empire, and they were polytheists and they were pagans, and they converted to Judaism, and that was the majority of the Jews in Germany. They weren't Semitic people. The Germans weren't anti-Semitic. They weren't anti-religious. They weren't anti-Jewish. They saw there was a minority ethnic group in their country that controlled the news, controlled the economics, controlled the military, controlled the minds of the people, controlled it caused this, from the German perspective, caused a second depression in the 1930s by leading a worldwide boycott against German goods. So from the German perspective, the Jews had to get out one way or another. And the original plan was to send them to Madagascar or some shit, just deport them. but it's fuzzy to me. It's fuzzy to me. I don't really understand how it got to the point where it got, which is where 1 to 10 million people got exterminated. Like, I don't know how the fuck that happened, really. Like, it was extreme. So, basically, Hitler was not necessarily a person. I mean, he was a person and he was unique, but he was a manifestation of the popular sentiment at the time, right? He wasn't unique in his feelings. The very reason that he was so powerful and so supported is because 99% of the people were into what he was saying in Germany. And then, and then from the German perspective, they lost the war because of the Jews. Yeah, okay, they exterminated 1 million people, but why did the United States enter World War II? It's no secret we entered World War II to save the Jews from extermination, which I think was the appropriate thing to do. I don't think anyone would say that we shouldn't have done that. From the German perspective, that's why we entered World War I as well. Was for the Zionist cause. And if you want to go with a conspiracy of why we're in the Middle East right now, you could say, all right, we're in the last 2 wars probably for Zionist interests. Is it possible that we're destabilizing the Middle East, so serving to help Palestine or to help Israel? Could be. I'm not necessarily going to say that, but if someone wanted to argue that, they could do that. I hate it when the Jews take over. I'm very pro-Jewish because I'm really impressed by these people. I'm really impressed by these people for how dominant they are. I think there's something really special about their culture or the way their brains work or something. Because if you look at even America, if you're interested, go to a look of Jewish entrepreneurs, Jewish business people, and what you'll see is really interesting. We have Mark Zuckerberg. I don't want to get into Jewish conspiracy, and I want to say that I'm pro-Jewish because I admire these people's industriousness. But we have Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Facebook, Larry Page, owner of Google, CEO of YouTube, Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft, owners of MSNBC, CNN, owners of the Money Supply, Goldman Sachs, the Rothschilds, Alan Greenspan. These are powerful people, is all I will say. These people are really impressive. So yeah, that was kind of the German perspective. I tried to give it objectively, explain why Hitler was able to do this. Is because that was how people really felt at the time. Oops, I should have played something else. Side note, but being what people perceive as white helps too. Handle other people's lands, animals, and finances. Look at the amount of Nobel Prizes and create the percent of population create other group, and you will have a good reason to be impressed. Yeah, there's something about these people that they're God's chosen people or whatever. But there's you can only take things so far, and I will definitely not say that the Jews deserved it. I will definitely not say that, but they took it to a point where the Germans were going to revolt, and they were at best case going to be forcibly evicted from the country. Tensions were just too high. They were too small a minority to be controlling the news, the money, the business, and now the government too. So people kind of rallied behind Hitler. All right, moving past the historical context of the times, what I found to be really interesting about Mein Kampf was, well, first of all, it was really angry, and it's really angry, and it's at times irrational and illogical, and it's not only anti-Semitic, but it's white supremacist. He calls African people born half apes. Like, it's just really nasty. However, some of the stuff in there is genius. For instance, you will be interested in hearing this. And I'll get to the chat after this point. Hitler explained everything that he did and was going to do in that book, and his process for doing it. And the way that he did it is all through information control.
Yeah, I don't know if they will for something like that.
It's all about propaganda. I don't know what word he used. The translator chose to use the word propaganda. Propaganda is a loaded word, but what Hitler really means by propaganda is your mission statement. The most important thing is that people know what your group's mission statement is, what you stand for, what you're going to do, why it matters, why it's important, and all that. That's all. The most important thing is that everybody knows what you're up to. The better your propaganda and the wider the spread, the more people are going to see it, and the better it is, the more people are going to become supporters. What a supporter is just someone who, a supporter is just someone who says, all right, I agree with what you're doing, or I support it. I'm not going to help, but I'm not going to stand in the way. 1/10 of supporters turn into, I'll get to the chat in a moment. 1% of the supporters, actually, I need to address this. The Germans were not revolting. The Jews weren't doing anything wrong. They were just successful. So the goal of this conversation is not to assign good and evil, but to explain why this behavior happened from the German perspective, right? In order to know why it happened, we need to think from their perspective. I mean, you could say the Jews didn't do anything wrong, they were not successful. That is not what the sentiment of the German people was at the time, right? So who's actually right, who's wrong, it doesn't matter. I just want to know, and it's useful to know why this happened, right? In order to know why this happened, we have to assume from the German perspective. If we say the Jews did absolutely nothing wrong, then the only conclusion is that there's a whole race of evil people who turned bloodthirsty for no reason, which is, I mean, you could argue that, but I'm more interested in knowing how they justified it in their brains, because somehow they justified it, right? Anyways, moving back to the propaganda thing, which by propaganda, again, I mean mission statement or whatever. The most important thing is your mission statement is wide, people know it. The more people that know it, the more people are going to convert to your cause as supporters. The more members are convert from supporters. So a supporter that turns into a member now supports your cause and actually acts. They're actually going to do things and help you. The more supporters you have, the less members you need. If everyone sees your propaganda and if everyone agrees, no one's going to oppose you, you need very few members. If your propaganda is not good, your mission statement or whatever is not good, and you have no followers or no supporters, then you need tons of members to get anything done because there's tons of opposition. So, according to Hitler, if you want to come to power and to make shit happen, you need to have good propaganda so that you get as many members as possible. You get only the most radical members. This is an important part of his plan, is that once you're doing shit, you close membership. Shamoka's command. Target player sacrifice, put a +1 counter. The most important, you close membership at that point. Because competing interests will come in. And you can apply this to anything. You can look at how the Nazis did it. I'm not comparing the Nazis to Christianity here, but any organization, for instance, Christianity, their Bible is their propaganda. It's their mission statement. The more people that read the Bible, the more people become believers, which are supporters. The more people that become supporters, some of those people turn into members. Members become clergymen, they become missionaries, and so on, and the organization's power grows. So, and you can look at the news as well. Any kind of cause, the more people that know what you're about, the better. 8. The more people that know what you're about, the better. and you need to have your book out there or whatever so people can read it. That's not what he's trying to say. He's telling us how Hitler got the Germans. Yeah. If you missed my introduction, the approach that I chose to take was
Yeah. So, do you have numbers of capacity, like hard numbers of capacity?
My approach was objectivist. No such thing as good or evil. Trying to figure out what the Germans were thinking, why this happened. Although, again, I acknowledge that 1 million to 10 million people were exterminated at Auschwitz, and
okay.
It's hard not to call that evil. So, but the question is what led up to that point, and it was like, all right, there's a majority of people who are being controlled by a very small minority of people, and the minority was so powerful that there was a. Did I forget to play a land last turn? I did. That sucks. That sucks, but we can still try to win this. White, red, blue, Jeskai Ascendancy. And I'm gonna attack, I think. The reason I'm not playing Tormenting Voice now is because I want to untap Savage Knuckleblade as a blocker later.
Okay.
Hamlet, why then is none for you? There is nothing there. I have Hamlet in my room. I haven't read any of it yet, so I don't fully understand that reference.
Cores, processor, storage for
in 1935, Jew didn't control anything in Germany from what I perceived. Most wanted to get out, and the British and French and America weren't offering safe haven. Dominican Republic got more than those three.
Each? Okay.
From what I perceived. What's important is what you perceive is what the media tells you to perceive. Again, I'm not going to say that the Germans were ultimately right here. I'm absolutely not going to say that. But all of our perspective has been totally through. If you don't believe this, and again, this isn't a Jewish conspiracy, this isn't anti-Judaism, this is available knowledge. If you look up who mostly owns the news in this country and who has owned the news, it's a minority of people of the same ethnic background.
So all of these
you can look up Jewish business owners to see that.
I understand why.
So we're getting the Jewish perspective. America is friends with the Jews. That's fine. I'm not against that. But they're not going to tell us why the Germans actually acted, right? In America, we're never going to be, unless we read Mein Kampf or hear what some of the insiders from Germany felt, we're never actually going to get even their rational perspective on it. We're only going to get in what way they're, just hear that there was an evil race battle or whatever, which you could boil it down to, but...
I'll ask something that, do you guys have budget? You're separate.
I mean, whether or not the Jews controlled Germany or not, the Germans felt that the Jews did. And again, that's the important part of the discussion here, is not what was right or wrong, or not even what was true, but how these people felt. Right? That is what the most useful information. And again, I'm really trying to tiptoe here to not be pro-Nazi at all, to not be anti-Semitic at all, but just to try to figure out why these people did what they did, right? Couldn't that be a useful thing to know? What they were thinking? And I mean, this can be used preventative as well. Like, all right, if we want to stop this from happening, we need to stop the news from doing this or whatever, you know.
And that's what
my Jewish Holocaust survivor grandparents were poor, controlled zero, media, almost nothing.
You guys are in OSG, but you're still part of Xbox, so we want to help you because we want to support Xbox.
Yeah, this is exactly what I want to avoid.
Should be part of OSG, so.
The Holocaust happened and it sucked and it was bad for a lot of people.
I don't know what.
Whether there's any reality in this at all, this is what the German people thought in Germany at the time. Right?
Okay.
3, are we going to die? Proposing Jewish stereotypes about owning media is nonsense. Again, I'm not trying to be, this isn't an argument about what's right or wrong, this is an argument about what people believe, right? Is that a useful argument to have? It's a very, very difficult conversation to have because it's very hard to detach from our opinions of what is right and wrong. And I understand that's a very difficult thing to do. But I'm interested in trying to do it and say, I wonder what these people thought is all this is about. What were these people thinking is all this is about. I wonder what these people were thinking. He's talking about perspective. Hitler provided a narrative that connected the suffering of everyday German people to the Jews, and it made it seem like he had to be anti-Semitic to be pro-German. Again, it wasn't necessarily even Hitler. Hitler did not necessarily make everyone feel a certain way. He was a manifestation of a belief set at the time, right? He came out of a group of people that felt how he did. German population did it because people always try to serve their self-interest, and the Nazis were good at deceiving with their demagogy. Jumping a conversation like this tells a very different story than what I was actually being talked about. Yeah. So I should repeat this from the beginning, that the goal of this is to figure out how the Holocaust happened. And in order to do that, we need to detach from conceptions of good and evil, which is really hard to do for this topic, and step into the mind of the German masses at the time and see what were they thinking at this moment in history, and what were the historical contexts that led up to that. What happened in World War I? What happened between World War I and World War II? This seems difficult to do, but ultimately worthy. He was a manipulator. He was definitely a manipulator. He was from what I understand, he was a compelling orator, good speaker, passionate speaker, yeah, very well-studied speaker. This isn't about whether the Holocaust happened. It actually is about the Holocaust happened, period. But it isn't what it's about. Unfortunately, the American public is not pro-Zionism. There's so many lies about the IDF and Israel in general floating around. Yeah, it's really hard to know what's real and what's not real, isn't it? Isn't it pretty hard to know what's real and what's not real? I think so. Play dig through time. I'm going to exile all of these. It's really hard to know what is real and what is not right now. American public is not pro-Zionism. Have you seen the German propaganda? Look up German children's books from the time. I have seen the German propaganda. This is exactly where my information is coming from. And that's the whole point of it, is to figure out what the German propaganda was at the time. And the most important of the German propaganda is Mein Kampf, which is my source in all this. As this book was given to newlyweds in Germany. I want a mantis rider. And another dig through time. This book was given to all newlyweds in Germany. It was a national bestseller as well. Hitler was getting paid out the ass for this book. Red, blue. Yeah, so I mean, my source in this is what the German propaganda was. This is what the German propaganda was at the time. The German propaganda was that these things had happened. And again, it's really hard to know what is real and what's not real. But what we can figure out pretty easily is what people believed. So that's my target for this. A search for the truth is difficult. The 1% is probably the U.S. current version of post-World War II Jews in Germany, a minority group with too much power that are easy to dislike out of frustration and fear. Our situation is not really comparable to the Germans, because the Germans had just lost a world war, gotten fucked over by a Great Depression. We are not there. So, for instance, in our country, if the 1% all shared the same racial group and people were starving and had been defeated in the war by that 1%, or they felt they had, people would go fucking crazy. And they would do bad shit. They would do bad shit. Mein Kampf's a great source to learn about German propaganda, but not about actual history. Propaganda is history. Can anyone tell me an unbiased, objective perspective to what happened in World War II? That's pretty hard to do. I think the best thing you can do is read the biased one from one side and then read the biased one from the other side, and then try to make judgments from there, right?
Hey, you're in our labs. Here's the process.
I mean, we're exposed to tons of propaganda by the news, by the media, by all kinds of shit. So I think that it's helpful to look at both sides of everything. And again, I mean, 1 million people died. That's a bad thing, and we also want to avoid it. In order to avoid that, we need to know why, how it happened.
What they're going to come back with, and they've already brought up to me is Dex needs to get out of fucking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I'll say this. When I pick up Mein Kampf, it's not a history textbook. This isn't. This is exactly what happened. It's, all right, what were the people thinking at the time? And why were they thinking it, right? Very hard to do. I wrote in my hand that I was not going to talk about that on stream today, but here I am. Oops, I should have gotten red mana. Battleclaw Mystic, and another dig through time. 6 to 12 million dead. There's no such thing as unbiased history. Yeah, so I try to read both sides. Or there's not even two sides. There's usually 4 or 5 different sides. I always wonder how much I hear about North Korea getting propaganda. It's crazy, man. In North Korea, they make kids get up and pledge allegiance to a flag and a ruler and one God, under nation, under God. Don't you see? We're exposed to propaganda in the same way. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just necessary. History is a form of media. Yeah, and it really is about who. There's a Malcolm X quote as well. Whoever controls the masses has the most power. The media has the most power in the world because they control the minds of the masses, right? Who controls the media? And then we see who's really in power. The problem with the speech about understanding the beliefs of the people is that you're using a singular source. I'm actually not using a singular source. My other source, if you want to watch this YouTube video, if you look up Zionist Jew converts to Catholicism, here was a Zionist Jew who was living in Germany at the time and can also tell you, again, not the facts, but, oops, the wrong land, but general idea of what people were supposedly feeling in Germany at the time. And again, it's not a singular source. I studied World War II and World War I in history class growing up. I'm fully exposed to the American side, the United States side of what happened in these. So I'm not using, yeah, I mean, if I made a mistake at all, it was in engaging in this conversation, I would say, right? If I made any mistake, it was engaging in this conversation. This is incredible. How can I play and talk like this? Because I've played with this deck so much that this shit's easy. It's cake. Mein Kampf is a bad book. It's very tiring to read. To be fair, it was like this to most people back then. There's good and bad in the world. It isn't relative. Wouldn't you want to know what bad is thinking? Came higher for a higher controversy. Isn't it helpful to know what bad was thinking at the time they did bad, right? Let's say that things are just bad. Things are evil. There's evil people that do evil things. Wouldn't you like to know what evil is thinking when they do evil? If you want to stop evil? Do you think that that is a helpful thing to do? You keep killing it with this deck. Yeah, the deck's insane, man. It's not hard when the deck's this good. My rating is slowly climbing. It's still got a ways to go, but if we say that those people are evil, end of discussion, we don't actually learn anything. If we see, to those people, they were not evil. most of the world would say that what they did is evil. But if we know what they're thinking, we can maybe stop that shit from happening again. Alright, Thunderbreak Regent sucks for us. I wish that I had saved Disdainful Stroke. What happened to my opening video statement? I'll say it again. Yeah, but I mean, it was necessary. I felt like it was necessary to shift the statement. Yeah, I fucked this game up really bad. I should have kept up Negate and Disdainful Stroke, and now we're going to lose. But it's hard to do when I'm having this ridiculous conversation at the same time. And I will say this conversation is ridiculous. If not ridiculous, it's ridiculous. I'm going to... Yeah, I'm just going to treasure cruise. Killing people just for being Jews is quite evil, don't you think? Yeah, but that's not what they were thinking. Don't you want to know what they were thinking? Right? It's evil to us if we don't consider what they were thinking. And it can still be evil. It can still be evil even after figuring out what they were thinking. But it's helpful to know what they were thinking when they did it. And what they were thinking was not, I hate Jews, I'm going to kill Jews. At least from what Hitler fed these people's minds. And what was popular ideas at the time was that our people are being oppressed by these people, and it's a battle for our life or their death. And that's why it ended in their death. The difference between good and evil is usually the same as the difference between us and them. Conflict is an inevitable result of individualism. It's evil to kill people just because they're a Muslim, don't you think? This conversation has gotten away from us. Alright, Flooded Strand. I'm going to take a beating, if not a pounding, on this turn. But it's necessary to make that Thunderbreak Regent go back to the opponent's hand. And it's going to be painful to do. It's evil to kill people just because they're American. I'm interested in knowing what the people are actually thinking. Atheist here. I don't believe in true evil. Time to say evil is a short code for very bad, though. Whether or not I believe in evil is not necessarily important. But I think it's important to know what evil was thinking, what that person was thinking. Not if Muslim people want to kill everyone else for not being Muslim. America is the only country that shits on other countries, so revenge is bad for people who've been fucked over. My Jew neighbor is richer than me. The best thing is to kill him and his family, friends, all of them. That's not what they were thinking, though. They were thinking killing Jews would solve their problems because they accepted a madman's propaganda. That could be what happened. Alright, let's get back to Magic. I hope some of you enjoyed that objectivist thinking and have a better idea of why that happened. Negate. We don't actually need this land, I don't think. Doesn't seem like we actually need this land. That microphone. Is this going on YouTube? God, no. This dies on this channel. People don't need to see this. If you take some of the things I said out of context on this, you get me into trouble. If the Jews in Germany were all trying to repress non-Jews. This discussion is about perspective, media manipulation, and propaganda. Gotta go. Props for willing to go into such a dangerous topic on stream. Enjoy your games. Murderous cut. Okay, here's a question. We're going to shift the topic. If possible, I want to not talk about Germany, World War I, World War II. Try to close it at that, if possible. New conversation, just as dangerous. I'm looking for answers. Conspiracy theories, welcome. Why are we in the Middle East right now? And why is there not even really any propaganda about it? We knew why we were going to Iraq, supposedly. The Muslim people had fucked us over on 9/11. We were going to get revenge. That was the narrative. And so we had supporters and